Salutations, sheeple, and welcome to or welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Somplex0, or Sami, and today we're talking about how I survived my very first costume contest. But before we get into that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that cool stuff. I have some cool things in the works here. Also, before I get too far, I just wanted to say, hi, hello, welcome to all of you new people here. There are 326 more of you.
Hi, future editing Sami here. There are 494 of you guys now. Welcome!
Than the last time I posted a video, so welcome. I hope you stick around, even though this isn't the type of video that you subscribed for initially. Trust me, more like that will be coming. But in the meantime, I hope you stick around for me sharing something that I find cool and interesting. So, just to take a moment to briefly go over my costume, in case you haven't seen this video here on screen, I will go over everything again, essentially. I decided that I wanted to dress up as Princess Luna from My Little Pony because a very good friend of mine, Rose, wanted to essentially do the princesses for My Little Pony. Rose wanted to do Cadence. I decided, hey, you know what? Let's do Luna because I found this figure of her here and I fell in love with the design of it. A quick moment to give a special little shout out to Rose because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have made this costume, and I love it. I love upgrading it and everything about it. So thank you, Rose. I appreciate you. So far, I've worn this costume to 3 different conventions now. I've upgraded it a little bit each time in some way or another. This is my first full costume, and seeing it slowly grow into something I'm more and more proud of every time I wear it brings me so much joy. I'm very proud of it. It's like a little benchmark of, hey, I have skills and my skills are slowly growing. I've made things before. I've made like a hat, I've made a dress, I've made a cape. A cape was the very first thing I sewed for a costume, I believe, for my Loki costume. But this is the first thing that in some way or another I have made almost everything for it. Well, I guess it's not the first thing. First thing would be my witch costume, but this is the first thing that was like not just me throwing something together because I saw some pretty fabric and decided that I wanted to make something out of it. For the sake of some more background information, I won't spend too much time on this as I already went into more detail in my video talking about preparing for this day. And this video is intended to focus on what I upgraded and how I did it. Link to that video is in the description and also in the card right there, by the way. But finding the fabric to match the color and how I imagined the fabric flowed and felt as perfectly as I could was important to me. I eventually found the blue for the shirt and the skirt at Joann's. It took a lot of searching, like various different fabric sites, Etsy, and like even some smaller fabric stores in the city where I live. But I eventually settled on fabric from Joann's because it was the most easy to get to, unfortunately. And also I could feel it in person and see it in person and see the way the light hit it, and it was easier to make my decision with in-person fabrics. The fabric in the train was also satin, but that was custom designed. I wanted to dye it. I was terrified of staining my kitchen, so I went onto my iPad, I made this little ombre thing, and then I used this website called Spoonflower. By the way, not sponsored because I don't get sponsors. I would like some, but not yet. Went to Spoonflower and used their custom fabric option. What sucked about this though is that I had to get 2 pieces of fabric because due to the fact that the design was only printed on one side and there was no way to like request a double-sided print, I had to double it up essentially. It was frustrating, but it gave me the opportunity to put horsehair braid in the hem of the train, which I feel helps stabilize it, and when I assemble the outfit properly, helps give the flowiness of the train a little bit of shape. So going over how the days before, and most specifically the night, because apparently that's when I do my best work, the day before something is due. I stayed up late to finish it, stressing myself out. Because of that, I don't really have much behind the scenes footage, but I can explain it well enough. I can walk you guys through it. Eventually I got to a point where I just said screw it and rushed through it, and you could tell if you look closer, but that's not important. Starting with the wig, I didn't learn to shape the curls like how I wanted to, but I do like the way that I did manage to do the curls because it kind of looks like it was the wig brought into real life, which was great. It took a lot of hot ironing, a lot of curling, a lot of hairspray that got stuck to my hands at multiple points, but It's okay, it's fine. Now, moving on to the sleeves, I didn't bunch them up like they were in the original figure, but I honestly like them a lot better this way, so I highly doubt that this is something I'll change in the future. The black lace on the sleeves was gifted to me by a friend who doesn't live in the same country anymore, so for sentimental reasons, it was very important to me that I incorporate it somehow into the outfit. I had bought some black and sheer organza fabric that I intended to use for the sleeves, but instead I decided to use the blue satin as a base and then layered the black lace on top of it. It was a little bit difficult, however, since I had very little lace to work with and it was from like some other garment beforehand, so there was like a seam that I had to work around, but with a little bit of shaping, a little bit of cutting, a little bit of fabric glue, I was able to make it work. Two things that I slightly regret and will definitely be going back to add later on. I didn't get to add the black ruffle under the corset nor the crescent moon that you see here. I also decided not to bother with the crown as my 3D printer was, and still is, bugging out and I needed to focus my attention on the shirt. So for the crown, I went with something that I stole from someone else's Halloween costume, quite literally off of their head, by the way. Shout out Anna. You're a real one. But it's mine now and I have absolutely no intention of giving it back. So thanks. Moving on with the shirt. So of course I've con crunched before. There was a convention where I had to make not one, not three, but 4 different costumes for one weekend. Worst con crunch of my life. But with this, it was so much worse because it was the night before my very first ever costume contest. At a certain point, I ran into an issue where the shirt was finished, quote unquote. It didn't rest on my shoulders properly because I guess I made it a size too big or something. Because the last time I made the shirt, I had made it a size too small, so I went a size up, but clearly I was somewhere in between those two sizes. It was midnight by that point, and I admit I burst into tears for a brief moment before I went into problem-solving mode. Crying before fixing the issue is something I apparently tend to do a lot. It's somehow become like a necessary process for anything difficult I do, which is great and fantastic, but if the universe wills it so, I suppose. My first attempt at a solution was I tried adding thin straps, but those looked weird and a little bit frayed because of how fast I was cutting, and I could not be bothered with trying to slow down because it was already so late and I was con crunch mind. I was not thinking straight at that point whatsoever. I did do kind of a strap idea where instead I attached 2 strips of fabric to the back of the shirt and basically use that to tie it into a bow so that way it could stay rested on my shoulders, it could stay where it needed to be on my body essentially. And if you don't look too closely, you can't tell that it's there, so I love that. And also, circling back to the wig, I spaced out the purple a little bit more so that way it could look a lot more like it does in the figure. I took out wefts that I put in before and then distributed them more evenly throughout the hair, and then I spent hours curling and spraying and all that stuff. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this wasn't really all too eventful. To start off, I was anxious to hell and back. I had no clue what to do or what to expect. I ended up at the wrong building to start with. Thank you, past Sami, for thinking to bring shoes. I am so glad that I had the foresight to bring a spare set of shoes that weren't heels. Thank you so much. Past Sami, more recent past Sami very much appreciates you. First thing I did was sign in, grab my badge, and made sure I was aware of my pre-judging time. At this point, I was already anxious and nervous, but that was absolutely nothing compared to later. We'll get into that. For now, all you really need to know is that my day was really just spent sitting around because I was so anxious. I did manage to get some really cool pictures with some really cool cosplayers, a lot of which I haven't yet posted. My bad. I got some professional photos taken, which made me very happy. Thank you to the amazing and lovely people who run Cos Meetup Chicago. They were working with Uchi-kan, I don't know how you pronounce it, to set up a proper professional photo booth. I came across their existence at Fan Expo 2023, which was last year, and I am very grateful because as much as I would love to, if it weren't for them, I would never have professional photos of any of my costumes because, yeah, them is broke. between the cost of cons and fabric. Moving on, after sitting around for a bit, I went to pre-judging. I was being judged with somebody else. I forget what their costume was, but I remember that they were wearing a red cloak, and on the inside, they had the most beautiful cheetah print design that they had spent hours upon hours putting into the inner layer of like the inside of the cloak itself. And everything about her costume was absolutely gorgeous. She said that she spent closer to 150 hours on it, and I could genuinely tell. It was absolutely fantastic. It was, I'm sorry, I had nerd out a little bit about seeing things that people made, especially their costumes and such. So this entire experience was fantastic for me. I eventually got to judging time. I was going to go outside and take some more photos and videos on my own, but then I decided, you know what? I'm terrified of being late. I was actually almost late to the costume contest because I got caught in Artist Alley. I'm minding my own business, and then I just hear Among Us potions from the dark web. Okay, sure. Which was in a very small room, but there were a lot of people in there. I was hoping to be able to buy something before the show, but that didn't end up happening, and I realized that it, like when I was halfway through Artist Alley, and I had entered it at like 1:40 or something like that. It took me a really long time to get to that really small room, which is fine, I suppose, but that's whatever. I rushed over to where I needed to be, and then I stood backstage. I saw some really great and fantastic costumes there. I saw Hiccup, I saw Link. One of my favorite ones there was Miku, which was somebody, they were a Miku cosplayer, but Ronald McDonald themed essentially, and I loved it. Got to talk to the person who made that costume and was wearing it, and they explained how they made it, and I was very impressed because the costume was lined, and I have not yet gotten to the lining part of costume making because it's very intimidating to me, so I was very impressed that somebody like so much younger than me was able to do that, and they made it look freaking fantastic. Not going to directly mention or at them because I do believe that they are under the age of 18, but hey, if you're watching this, I love your costume. I hope to see you again at future conventions. A lot of us backstage were really nervous, but fortunately there were some more experienced cosplayers behind there. The people who were running the costume contest weren't entirely certain of what they were doing. I believe there was a change in leadership recently, but those other cosplayers took over and was like, hey, this is what happened in previous things before. This is how it should go. Do you want our help? And so they helped run things smoothly. They helped get everything into order. And then yeah, after that, everybody was called out one by one in what I believe was alphabetical order by their usernames. We all walked across the stage and then like stood in the audience and waited for things to be judged. And yeah, that was essentially about it. The two people who won were DCW Builds and Brew Cosplay. I was so impressed by their costumes, getting to see them in person and seeing them up close. I genuinely feel blessed to have been able to do so. I will admit I was disappointed that I didn't get a chance to place or anything of the sort, but fortunately for me, I was thinking, hey, this is your first costume contest, you're here for experience, you're not going to win, especially seeing as you finished your costume. So I had been expecting to not win, to not place, so that definitely softened the blow a lot. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the last video, but I mentioned that something I was afraid about was crying in front of everybody. I did come close, but I didn't, so please be proud of me. I would appreciate that. After the costume contest, I just kind of went home, but I did get to interact with a lot of people that I hadn't seen since like fan expos, some people that I met there, all those things, all that such. I did get invited to something really cool. I'm gonna keep it a little bit of a secret for now, just so I can keep you guys on your toes, but I'm joining a group cosplay. I'm not gonna be specific, I'm not gonna say who, but for now, I'll just give you guys a little hint. The hint is green. After the entire day of being anxious, and especially right before walking out across the stage, my heart was racing. It was pounding while we were all lining up to exit to walk across the stage for the rest of the people who attended the convention to see us. Every space that I moved closer to the door was 1 second my heart beat a little bit faster. And I'm not gonna lie, I do have a little bit of a, oh my gosh, this is a moment that I am gonna wake up in the middle of the night because it's like one of those little cringy memories. One of the more experienced cosplayers was like, hey, walk across the stage, do 3 poses, and then get off. However, people had stopped clapping by the middle of pose 2, but I still struck my 3rd pose, and I felt really awkward about that. but it's okay, it's fine, nobody remembers. All that matters is that I didn't trip. Despite my disappointment and my loss, I have learned multiple things, which is what I intended to do when I said, okay, I'm going to participate in my first costume contest just to see what everything is about. One, I need to enjoy the con despite how stressed out I am, especially if I'm going to a con in the future that is paid for. I need to enjoy my day. I didn't get to do that much, and I regret it because there were so many people there that I met at previous cons that I didn't get to catch up with, and then there were new people that I met that I was looking back on it, I was definitely very socially awkward in those situations because I was just so stuck inside of myself and anxious about how the competition was going to go. Two, I'm setting up some sort of fake deadlines so that way I'm not con crunching the night before. Only thing that's happening the night before is final touches and making sure that the costume doesn't fall apart. There are a bunch of sewing techniques that I'd like to practice, but due to me starting my costume way too late, I default to simple ones. And if I want to ever win a bigger contest one day, I want it to be for something that I'm proud of learning how to do and not some sort of sloppy rush job. A mini little pipe dream that I have is to one day increase the quality of costumes on a big budget production or something like that. Or maybe be Megan Thee Stallion's personal like costume maker. That, honestly, I would love that. That's my dream. That's my real dream right there. It's not something that I actively think about or something I'm actively working towards, but it is like a little, that'll be nice type of thing. So if you've watched up to this point, you have now witnessed me talking about how my very first costume contest went. As a part of my New Year's resolutions, I have to participate in at least one more. I'm not exactly sure what that'll be yet or what the process for that will be. But yeah, I'm not sure what's next here for my channel, especially since I now have 346 of you guys to watch over. Wow. Thank you guys again so much for that. I legitimately cried when I reached 100, and I'm not even sure what to do now that I've reached 346 of you guys. That is insane. As far as cosplay goes, maybe you guys get to see me build a set of armor. And as far as commentary goes, who knows? Well, we'll check back on that next week. In the meantime, please continue to support me by liking, subscribing. Check out my other videos on the channel as well. There should be something up on the screen for something that was a little bit difficult for me to talk about, but is a topic I find important, involving family vloggers and such. And then the next thing, apart from that, you guys are gonna have to check back hopefully next week to see what I have in store for you guys next. For now, in case I don't see you guys, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.